All right.
All right, thank you for coming back. Okay, I'm going to pick up where I left off. We were talking about. Um, well, I actually have to be back at the clinic for 10, so. Okay, so I'm going to carry on. I was talking about the sort of signs and symptoms of anxiety. So we talked about need for control, difficulty initiating sleep, also that sort of, aggression, misbehavior, defiance, not wanting to sort of follow instructions, not wanting to carry out daily routine. These are all signs of anxiety. The other thing I want to say is, although it would be amazing, most times children don't come to you and say, I'm feeling anxious, please help me. And this is what it usually sounds like. It can even be something like, go away, I don't want to talk to you, I hate you. These are signs that, something's not okay. Your child is probably even not aware of what is not okay, but it's important to look out for these statements. Because like I said, very rarely, even with teenagers, is it straightforward where they're saying, I need help, we need to talk. I was having a conversation outside with a couple of parents about sort of the causes of anxiety. And, there are definitely a lot of different things, like I've got on this nice picture here, that go into struggling or dealing with emotions. Some things are stable, but some things also tend to be, circumstantial. So when I say stable, for example, genes or like your genetic disposition. So it's, yes, their anxiety does have, a genetic predisposition. What I mean by that is, if a parent or a family member struggles with anxiety, there is a chance, yes, that the child may also develop anxiety. But what recent research has shown us is that, genes are only blueprints. So, yes, we may carry that gene of having anxiety, but what also plays into that is these factors. Like, what are the child's early childhood experiences? What's happening psychologically for them? What's happening environmentally? What's happening at home? What's happening at school? Were there any sort of traumatic events or traumatic stress that the child had to deal with? What is the current family situation like? Are there any big changes to the child's life? Are the parents going through a divorce? Did a best friend move away? That tends to happen very often in our expat lives. And these are major life changes for a child. So yes, genes do play a role, but it's also nature. What are their experiences? What are their circumstances that decide how these instructions or genetic imprints are carried out and manifested in the child's health? And what helps us understand as clinicians, like from my point of view, what's really important when I'm seeing a child for anxiety is that sort of family assessment, right? Because I want to look at not just the history and sort of the genetic and hereditary concerns, but I'm also looking at what are the environmental triggers in this child's life? What is reinforcing that anxiety? What parenting styles are we engaging in at home? How does the family respond? How do parents respond when a child is showing signs of worry, is showing signs of anxiety? And also, very important, what are the coping strategies modeled by parents? Are parents showing that they're regulating their anxiety? Are parents modeling good coping skills? Because your child learns from what they see, from what you're showing them. So it's, when I'm doing my sort of parent intake, these are the questions that I'm looking for. So I'm not only focusing on, hey, do you have anxiety? Well, there you go, that's why your child has anxiety. It's all of these other things that play a really important role, not just in understanding, but also in the treatment, because then I know, okay, I need to involve the parents a bit more closely. I need to teach the parents how to model coping skills so that the child is learning this outside of my office. It's one thing to learn it in my office, but is that then being translated into their real life where it matters? I spoke about this a bit in detail last time, but I will, a few slides ago, but I will quickly kind of walk you through it. This goes back to that anxiety being on a spectrum. Too little, not good. Too much, that's your burnout. So this is kind of where you want to stay, that optimum level of stress. And I want to reiterate, anxiety is normal. Children and teenagers experience anxiety at times. It's a normal reaction to stress. Now, these feelings of anxiety have physiological responses, like for example, if a child is worried about a test, or they might be having an important race that they're participating in. And these will have, so when they're feeling anxious in that way, there will be physiological responses that go along with that. Increased heartbeat, excessive sweating. That's not unusual. That's how your brain responds to anxiety. That is your brain turning your fight or flight response in order to keep you safe during those situations. But sometimes anxiety can go beyond these typical symptoms, right? And they start impacting your activities, your child's activities of daily living. Like friendships, they don't want to go out, they don't want to see their friends, they're scared to leave the house, they don't want to go to school. The parents go out for a meal in the evening, constantly calling out, where are you, what time are you coming, unable to sort of stay at home alone without a parent. When this anxiety tends to start impacting their activities of daily living, that's when we're kind of looking at it as, okay, this is not healthy anxiety anymore. It's on that sort of, that disordered phase where it's debilitating, it's paralyzing them. That's when I would look at, okay, this is now getting unhealthy and I need to teach my child some coping skills. I need to teach them how to regulate. So that brings us to, how do we treat anxiety? Now, the information I have on this slide is what we do as professionals. Again, I think involving the family is a huge part of how I work with children that have anxiety, because like I said, it's one thing for the child to learn these skills in therapy, but without your support, this child is not translating those skills into real life. So, once I figured out what the impairment levels of this anxiety is, mild to moderate would be sort of psychotherapeutic intervention. So, common ways of dealing with anxiety, cognitive behavioral therapy, especially with young kids, play therapy. As they get a bit older, sort of preteens and teens, we tend to do some, acceptance and commitment therapy, maybe some DBT. But these are sort of your treatment options, some mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, things that help therapeutically, but without looking into medication yet. Personally speaking, for me, medication is always the last port of call. I want to make sure that we've tried everything, where we've worked with the child, we've worked with the parent, if necessary, we've worked with the school, and nothing seems to be, improving these symptoms of anxiety, and that's when we would consider a referral to a CNA psychiatrist to have that anxiety medication in place. And also, in therapy, just to kind of give you a brief of what we do, the focus is on teaching the child, like building that awareness. What are these negative thoughts that are causing this anxiety? What are your triggers? And building these coping skills. So, on to the most important part, I think, of today's talk is, what can you do as parents? And there is a lot that you guys can do before it comes to, okay, I need to take my child to therapy. So, before I talk about what you do, I want to talk about what I do with parents in my sessions. So there is strengthening that family problem-solving skills. So teaching you guys what you can do to support your kid, as well as communication. So making sure you as parents are communicating not just with the therapist, but also with the school, because you're that link for the child. And when we are talking, the therapist, the parents, and the school, that's when your child is flourishing. Okay, so things that you can do as parents. Before I get into this, I want to emphasize the importance, the most basic: sleep, food, and exercise. We know this as adults, and okay, we struggle with it sometimes, but we know that these help our mental health. It's the same thing for our children. We want to make sure they're getting enough sleep. We want to make sure they're not using their gadgets as much. Same rules like what you do, I hope you do, putting your phones away an hour before you go to bed. We want our children to also get into that habit. How are they going to learn? With you modeling that. And also healthy eating. I don't like telling children what not to eat, but I like to tell them, encourage them saying, these are good foods. Because I don't like doing this whole good food, bad food, because all food is food. But you want to encourage them to make healthy choices and reflecting that. So when they do choose to have a serve of salad, that's really nice how you've thought about your health and chosen to eat a serve of salad. That's great. So you're not making a big deal out of it, but you're recognizing and showing them that they've made a good choice and how that choice is going to impact them. And of course, movement. It's really important that they're getting to move. If they're doing exercise, great, but even if it's just through games and play, making sure that movement is part of their sort of daily living. And also, setting aside some time to kind of just, as a family, because especially with young kids, they're not going to do it unless they're guided through it. But, doing some mindfulness, calling it maybe a mindful minute. You do a grounding exercise where all of you sit down, use your 5 senses, tell me 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 that you smell, 2 that you can taste, and 1 that you can, what's the sense I missed? Feel. So this way, they're really kind of drawn out of their negative thoughts, drawn out of their worries, and focusing on sort of the present moment. And when they do that with you as parents, it's more encouraging for them, and they see, okay, you know what, I'm not the only one that needs it. My parents are also, probably struggling with this, and so we're all doing it together. And I think this is quite an important takeaway from today's talk. It's really about that, mindset shift as parents. So as parents, I'm encouraging you to be, yes, nurturing, yes, responsive, but also setting firm limits. Children feel safe when there are boundaries. So more of that authoritative parenting style versus the snowplow. What I mean by snowplow is you're quickly rushing to, make sure everything is okay, every obstacle is removed from their way, and that they're not going to struggle at all. That goes back to what I said earlier this morning. We're not teaching them coping skills. We're not teaching them to struggle and then problem solve. If they don't experience failure or discomfort, they don't know how to manage it. And also that sort of inoculate parenting, which is you're being preventative. So you're teaching them coping skills even before the anxiety or worry becomes an issue, right? And you're modeling and teaching healthy coping skills. Whereas the avoidant parenting style is, again, going in, trying to protect them. No, you don't have to deal with it. Don't worry, mom's got it. So it's really about fostering that resilience and that independence and allowing them that empowerment to take charge of their mental health. And what I mean by prevention versus, coaching versus protecting, same thing. You want to coach them through it, walk them through it, as opposed to, oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. You're just a bit anxious about this exam. It'll go away. You want to coach them through, okay, I hear you're anxious. What can you do that will help you sort of settle this anxiety? So you're walking them through it, almost like a sports coach, like a football coach. And again, prevention versus treatment, I think I've spoken about this before. It's really important to have these activities built in to your everyday lives as opposed to coming in only when there is a problem. And also that growth mindset versus fixed mindset, I think this is, just as I was reading through my notes, I had to kind of remind myself as well to do it. Like that fixed mindset tends to be very much, okay, the anxiety is inherent. There's nothing I can do about it. I just have to learn to deal with it. Whereas trying to shift that towards a growth mindset. That, okay, you know what, I am dealing with anxiety right now, but I can teach myself to manage it and it will go away. I'm not going to feel like this forever, right? So teaching your kids also to get into that sort of growth mindset where, okay, school's a bit difficult right now, I am having this problem with this and this person, but it's not going to remain like this. It's not inherent. I'm not always going to be anxious. I am going to learn how to solve this. And also, it's, research has shown us that, people with a growth mindset are better able to come up with, to create and deal with adaptive skills to manage that anxiety. Much better than people with a fixed mindset, because it's very much nothing's going to help me feel better. You know what, it'll just go away when it goes away. So, encouraging that, inculcating that in our children from a young age. And also, that EQ versus IQ, teaching them self-awareness, teaching them self-regulation. I think we do emphasize a lot on sort of that cognitive skills, attention, memory, language, we do all of that, but also teaching them the emotional intelligence of, being able to regulate, being self-aware, understanding your triggers, what is causing this. And these are some sort of takeaway skills that you can start practicing with your children from today, hopefully. So breathing, I know we talk a lot about it, but really what breathing does is helps regulate your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. What that means is it's really on a physical level, so it's not even emotional. On a physical level, it's telling your body you don't need to be in this fight or flight response. It's calming that, your heart rate, your breathing, settling all of it down and telling your body you don't need to be in this fear mode. You can settle, it's okay, it's safe. So the elevator breath, so it's pretty simple, it uses visualization as well, so it helps distract them from their thoughts. So close your eyes, pretend, I like to say Burj Khalifa because they know exactly what it looks like, so it's easier for them to imagine it. So as you take a deep breath in, this elevator is going all the way to the top of this building, and then as you breathe out, I want you to imagine that elevator coming all the way back to the bottom. So that visualization gives them something to focus on so they don't get distracted as they're doing their breathing, and the breathing actually calms them down. An alternative to this is the square breathing or the box breathing, where they're breathing in the shape of a square. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and hold for 4 and out for 4. So it's 4 seconds in the shape of a box. And what that does is, because it's so, you really have to pay attention as you're doing it, draws them away from the anxious thoughts or their negative thoughts and really settles them. Variations to that, I think young kids would really like the glitter jar. So filling up, a glass jar with some glue, water, and glitter, shake it up, that's what your anxious brain looks like. As the glitter settles, that's what your calm brain looks like. So they actually have a visual of what anxiety looks like and what being calm and being settled looks like. Noticing your breath, I think this might be a bit challenging for younger kids, but again, it's about just sort of, breathing in, breathing out, and observing that. But that can be quite distracting for young kids, but you can try it. And the 5-finger starfish, it's basically you hold up your hand and then you sort of breathe in, out, and what that does is, while they're breathing, also just that touch helps ground them, because it's sensory, so they're focusing on that. So that touch also helps kind of calm them down. And we've got the body scan. This is a personal favorite. I always use this, but I think it's so good for young kids as well. So getting them to sort of settle in and then checking in with each part of their body, starting from their feet all the way up to their head. No judgment, you're not trying to have an interpretation or an opinion about how each body part feels, but you're really just stopping, like checking with your feet. How am I feeling? Okay, they're hurting a bit because I'm on heels. Okay, moving on. Checking with my knees. How are they feeling? Okay, they're good. Moving on. And sort of just noticing physically what's happening in each body part, and then moving on to the next. Again, this is a distraction skill. Teaches them to sort of draw their attention to their physical body as opposed to thinking about their negative thoughts or what's worrying them. I think this is a great sort of self-regulation skill that you can teach your kids. So what it stands for is when they seem to be spiraling, or when they seem to be like really anxious and can't calm themselves down, it's like, stop whatever you're doing, take a few deep breaths. What is happening for you? So what are you observing in your body? Again, without any judgment, without any opinions. What do you notice? What emotions do you notice? What thoughts do you notice? What sensations, physical sensations do you notice? And then, what is most important for me to attend to right now? So, good example of using this, they might be in the middle of a test or an exam, getting really anxious about sitting the paper. What do I really need to focus on right now once they've gone through the first 3 steps? So it really helps kind of prioritize for them what's important, what needs to be done next. These are some activities that you can do with them at home. These are more preventative. So, even if your child isn't showing signs of anxiety, or, it isn't as debilitating, but these are good ways to kind of create emotional resilience and teach emotional regulation. So draw a shield, that's the visual here. So it's basically, okay, this isn't working, but that visual at the bottom. So they draw a shield and you get them to think about coping skills, things that would help them manage their anxiety. So for example, using a stress ball, listening to music, reaching out to a friend, whatever they think is going to kind of help them cope. Taking deep breaths. And with sort of older children, around about the age of sort of 7 to 12, you can actually get them to think about it. So again, they are taking charge, they are feeling empowered, that they're coming up with their coping skills. And also externalizing the anxiety. So something like they draw what their anxiety looks like and give it a name, like anxious Alan came to visit me today. So when they externalize it, it feels safer to deal with. And when they see, for example, let's say you're doing it as a family, mom, dad, and your child, you're doing it together, each one of you does that. So each one of you draws what your anxiety looks like and gives it a name. So not only does externalizing help them sort of feel like, okay, you know what, it's not the worst thing, but seeing that mom and dad also have an anxious Alan that comes to visit them makes it normal, makes it okay, that I'm not the only one that's struggling with it. There are others that struggle with this too. And then helping them visualize their safe place. Have them think about a place that they like to visit. It might be their bedroom, it might be the beach, I don't know, it might be a cottage that you once visited when you were on holiday, whatever it is. Get them to think about it and then engage their 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel? This kind of, again, draws their mind away from anxious thoughts and really focusing on something calm, something pleasant. And what it does is it reduces the intensity of the anxiety. It doesn't totally take it away, but it reduces it to a level where they are now able to cope with those feelings. They're able to, not be overwhelmed by those anxious feelings. And, having an emergency coping card, this is similar, so they have a, especially, I think this would help with school when they're at school. So you help them create it at home, and then that's something they share with their teachers. So, when I'm feeling anxious, I would like to, go to the calm down corner, or I would like to go see the school counselor. So that way, teachers also know how they need to help this child out. And the calm down kit, so this is actually like a physical box of, things that the child really enjoys doing, things that help sort of settle your child. I would encourage having, some sort of sensory stuff in there, so like a really soft blanket or like a teddy bear, and then, a book that they like reading if they like doing that, a game that they like to play. Definitely no devices in that box, but that is their box that they go to when they need to regulate at home, and encouraging them to kind of do that themselves, right? Like, okay, I notice you're feeling worried today. Why don't you go to your calm down box and find something that you'd like to do, and let me know if you want me to join. So you're letting them know that you're there to support them, but you're not managing their anxiety for them. So they can reach out to you if needed. And also, board games. I think this is a fantastic way to teach emotional regulation skills and to teach coping skills as well. We've got one, it's called the Smart Heart board game. I don't know if you've heard of it, but if you haven't, I definitely encourage you to get it, not only because it was created by clinicians at Lighthouse. I use it myself with my clients, the kids that I work with. And what it does is it teaches them to name their feelings. Once they've, I don't know if you've heard of the phrase, name it to tame it. Once they're able to name their feelings, it's less overwhelming for them. So just by them being able to communicate that with you, saying, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling worried, automatically helps that intensity of that emotion to settle. And with board games such as these, they're also learning coping skills. What do I do when I'm angry? What do I do when I'm stressed? What do I do when I'm sad? So it's really fostering that resilience and that regulation. I think that's it. Yeah, so those are our social pages in case you want to follow us. We have a couple of pages for parents, the Lighthearted Parenting and Smart Heart board game. There's a lot of fun stuff on there, a lot of informational stuff as well. And that brings us to the end.
I'll switch off the recording, and then if you have a question, just raise your hand and come, and you can ask it.